The moon has always been a symbol, a distant lantern, a silent companion, a destination once reached and then left behind. But beneath its pale surface lies something less poetic: resources. For decades, the moon was treated as a milestone, not a market. Flags were planted, samples collected, footprints left in dust that does not blow away. Then we turned our attention elsewhere. Now we are returning, not just to visit, but to extract. The future of lunar mining is not about curiosity alone. It is about infrastructure. It is about fuel, metals, water, and the possibility that Earth may not always be the only reservoir of what we need. The moon appears barren. Gray plains of regolith, cratered highlands, endless silence. But regolith is not empty. It contains oxygen bound within metal oxides. It contains aluminum, iron, titanium. It contains silicon for solar cells. And at its poles, within permanently shadowed craters, there is water ice. Water changes everything. In space, water is not merely for drinking. It can be split into hydrogen and oxygen, rocket propellant. A refueling depot in lunar orbit supplied by mined ice would transform mission architecture. Instead of launching all fuel from Earth's deep gravity well, spacecraft could refill in space. Energy economics would shift. Launching mass from Earth is expensive because gravity demands it. Escaping the moon requires far less energy. A kilogram mined and launched from the lunar surface costs a fraction of the energy required to lift it from Earth. In that difference lies opportunity. The moon becomes not a destination, but a logistics hub. Consider oxygen. Nearly half of lunar regolith by weight is oxygen, locked in minerals like ilmenite and anorthite. Extracting it requires energy-intensive processes, heating soil to high temperatures or using chemical reduction techniques. But once liberated, oxygen serves both life support and propulsion. A lunar base producing its own oxygen reduces dependence on Earth. Autonomy begins with air. Then there is helium-3. This isotope, rare on Earth, but implanted into lunar soil by billions of years of solar wind, has been proposed as a potential fusion fuel. In theory, helium-3 fusion produces less radioactive waste than conventional deuterium-tritium reactions. In practice, fusion itself remains unresolved. Mining helium-3 assumes breakthroughs not yet achieved. Extracting it would require processing vast quantities of regolith for trace amounts of isotope. Is speculative, but speculation drives investment. The more immediate value lies in construction materials. Transporting steel beams or concrete from Earth to build lunar infrastructure is inefficient. Instead, we may use the moon's own regolith to print structures, 3D printed habitats sintered from local soil, radiation shields built from compacted dust. In this model, mining is not about export. It is about enabling permanence. A sustainable presence requires local supply chains. But mining on the moon is not like mining on Earth. There is no atmosphere, no liquid water flowing to transport sediment, no weather to erode or replenish. Regolith is abrasive, electrostatically charged, and clings to equipment. Temperatures swing drastically between lunar day and night, though at the poles, near-permanent sunlight offers more stable conditions. Machines must operate in vacuum, in 1/6 gravity, under radiation exposure. Human miners cannot simply arrive with drills and trucks. Operations must be robotic, autonomous, and resilient. Teleoperation from Earth involves communication delays of over a second, manageable but significant. Artificial intelligence may oversee excavation, hauling, processing. The first miners may not be human at all. Energy is another constraint. Mining requires power, excavators, heaters, chemical reactors. Solar arrays near the lunar poles, placed on peaks of near-eternal light, could provide continuous energy. Nuclear reactors offer another option, compact and reliable, independent of sunlight cycles. Energy on the moon is not optional, is foundational. Then there is law. The moon is governed by international treaties, most notably the Outer Space Treaty, which prohibits national appropriation of celestial bodies. No nation can claim the moon as territory, but resource extraction occupies a gray zone. Recent legislation in some countries asserts that while land cannot be owned, extracted resources can be. This distinction will shape the economics of lunar industry. Private companies are already developing landers, prospecting tools, and excavation concepts. The next phase is not theoretical, it is commercial. Yet ethical questions persist. Who benefits from lunar resources? Will access be equitable or dominated by early entrants? Does mining alter a shared heritage site, or is it the next logical step in exploration? The moon is also a scientific archive. Its surface preserves billions of years of solar system history, untouched by plate tectonics or atmospheric erosion. Mining operations must balance extraction with preservation. Progress must coexist with restraint. There are environmental considerations as well. Lunar dust lofted by landings can travel kilometers, potentially damaging nearby equipment. Excavation could alter local albedo, changing thermal properties. Large-scale operations may modify the visual appearance of certain regions. The moon is not alive in a biological sense, but it is not inert in meaning. For humanity, it carries cultural and symbolic weight. Still, the practical momentum builds. A lunar economy may begin modestly. Small robotic extractors harvesting ice, processing regolith for oxygen, manufacturing simple components. Over time, infrastructure expands, storage depots, refineries, construction yards. From there, expansion outward becomes easier. Asteroid mining may follow, enabled by lunar-derived propellant. Deep space missions refuel at cislunar stations supplied by moon-based industry. The moon becomes a stepping stone, not just physically, but economically. The shift is subtle. Exploration transforms into utilization. The future of lunar mining is therefore not a single event. It is a transition, from flags to factories, from footprints to infrastructure. And beneath that transition lies a deeper realization. Earth is not the only repository of what we need. For the first time in history, humanity stands on the threshold of becoming multiplanetary in function, if not yet in population. Resources once considered unreachable are now within engineering reach. But unlocking them demands coordination across nations, companies, and generations. It demands technology capable of surviving harsh environments. It demands policy frameworks that prevent conflict before it begins. And it demands patience. The moon does not yield easily. Its soil is stubborn, its vacuum unforgiving, its distance is modest but meaningful. Yet it waits, unchanged for billions of years, holding water in shadowed craters and oxygen in mineral bonds. The future of lunar mining is not guaranteed. It may falter under economic strain or political disagreement. It may advance slowly, incrementally, almost invisibly at first. But if it succeeds, it will mark a profound shift. Not merely in industry, but in identity. We will no longer be a civilization bound entirely to one planet's crust. We will have extended our supply chain into space. And when the first spacecraft launches fueled by hydrogen and oxygen mined from lunar ice, leaving the moon's weaker gravity well to travel deeper into the solar system, it will carry more than propellant. It will carry proof that Earth is the birthplace of humanity, but not its only source of sustenance.